We, we have enough people.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Pulp Blotter Book Club on 22 panels, where I wish that there was a good comic adaptation of Shane, because that's very much on Mark and Sean's radar right now as they're deep into rehearsals. When does it open?
We open August 29th.
August 29th. Um,
Uh,
so,
Previews begin the 21st.
Mark
So,
has informed me that we can't go for 4 hours today because it's unprofessional if the director shows up late. Um, I think that just means that he's not enough of a debutante director yet. Um,
uh,
I'm certain there are some directors that are expected to show up late.
Oh, he's a
I,
total debutante.
no.
Don't sell yourself short. He's the belle of the ball.
Oh my God. Stop.
So,
Sean's just embracing his role as the big bad guy.
well, I mean, that's a good thing to do too.
Right.
Um, so
In the great words of Leonard McCoy, don't bury yourself in the part.
All right.
I mean that's not a bad thing either. So Megalopolis. I didn't manage to rewatch the movie itself. I did watch Megadoc and I did reread the comic and I appreciate it more every time. Um and that's where I'm gonna go right now, and then I want thoughts from everyone else because I know that in a global sense, I'm in a minority for how much I like Megalopolis, but I don't know that I'm in a minority in this room. And you guys might have better words for it.
Yeah, I had purchased the movie and did not get to rewatch it. I have seen it, but I didn't get to rewatch it for this, so I also regret that. But this is my first time going through the graphic novel, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoy both.
Right.
Uh, it's it's a little indio. Well, no, it's very idiosyncratic,
Definitely.
and so it's I can just see the difficulty that Chris Ryall and Phillips had adapting something that seems so personal to Francis Coppola. Uh,
What
it's definitely very interesting in that
I did
regard.
like I should have tossed this out. I did get to talk to Chris Ryall about this. If you go back in our archives, one of the things that Chris Ryall and I talked about was this book. And one of the things that he loved about the experience is Francis gave him very little direction. In fact, more times than not, when he talked to him, he said, "No, no, no. I want this to be Chris Ryall and Jacob Phillips Megalopolis." The idea is that you're going to take the same source material and do your thing with it. Um, so, I mean, they weren't even like really shared on set designs or things like that. Um,
I I only laugh because I feel like uh okay, to start off with, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I'm a huge fan in that I acknowledge that it has problems. I acknowledge that it is probably too ambitious for um its reach its reach exceeds its grasp. And but I find it so energizing to watch somebody who is clearly to watch something created by someone who is clearly an artist trying to exceed his grasp. And I think that it is endlessly interesting to watch. I think that there's plot lines and stuff that kind of meander and don't quite wrap up. I think there's things that are incredibly silly about it, but I also think that that's a feature, not a bug.
Right.
I think that there are things that are uh, just upliftingly exciting about it. The first time I saw this movie was at the Alamo Drafthouse in Chicago, basically by myself in the theater because, you know, the narrative around it was so skewed. And I got to the end of that movie and I found myself crying because I don't know, it was this image of the baby and all of the world being built around it. So something about it just really struck me. Um, I will say, I think that even if they weren't provided with actual set designs and things like that, clearly the concept was clear,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh,
Because
absolutely.
there's a lot of connection to it. And
Francis apparently wrote a very detailed script,
right.
and they were given the shooting script. So they were given the same material that the set designers were given, and that
Mhm.
so I mean, it wasn't intended to look completely different, at least the way I understood it. But it was also like you get to make your decisions on what scenes to cut, what scenes not to cut, what dialogue to
Sure.
mess with. You get to make decisions on how this or that looks.
I think
Um,
that's what surprised me the most when I read it was that I had heard you say that, this is not an adaptation, this is a separate thing. And then when I read it, I'm like, this is pretty much the same thing
hmm
because the dialogue is almost exactly because I just watched the movie like a day ago before I read this. The dialogue's almost exactly the same. Most of the scenes and things are very much the same. There's a few places that are changed, and there's times when, yeah, some of the wedding place looks different, and I can see what you mean by set direction and stuff like that. But as
hmm
far as the story goes, it is a very faithful, very almost point by point straight on adaptation of the movie. I didn't see
hmm
well, and that,
really hardly anything
I mean,
missing.
it was happening simultaneously. Um, and I think that says, I mean, Coppola was working on it for 40 years, so that probably says a lot to how well he'd laid out his vision before
What's
anybody got
weird,
started.
the only things I really saw that were different were in many ways the things that it appears Shia LaBeouf screwed up by making him change while they were doing stuff. Because it appeared in Megadoc that Shia is every bit as much of a pain in the ass to work at with as he has ever been, right? Um, and so there's like that scene where he's sitting down at the table with his uncle or whatever. None of that's actually in the movie or in the book, probably because
Yeah.
it didn't exist until kind of that was forced in by those
Well,
people.
I mean,
Well, Voight got him on the project, right? And isn't that
Well,
Yeah.
I think he'd originally been on the project. Like, I mean, because again, the project has been how many decades in the making? So, like, he'd been on the project in one of the false starts way back when,
Mhm.
and Voight vouched for him to keep him on it even after all of the issues that he'd had.
hmm
Um, I mean, it's
but
weird. I had a weird, like, just to hit it quickly because I don't want this to be all about the Megadoc, but I had a weird feeling with Shia because, like, I could get how it would strike me as a pain in the ass, or how it would strike a lot of people as a pain in the ass, but I also felt like he was actually trying to understand and work on it, and that he, like, clearly he and Francis didn't have the best
Mhm.
rapport, but I felt less like Shia was trying to say I must do it this way than he's like, this is the way I see it. I'm trying to understand how you see it.
and I think that Francis got frustrated with okay, again, we don't want to make this all about the mega doc, which is
Right.
It
fascinating. And
is
I
Oh,
think
great.
it's
that
amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I think it's also fascinating because you also see brief glimpses of the other versions that he'd been working on over
Mhm.
the years, the table
Right,
reads and things like that, and the
right.
other actors that had come in gone. But I mean, I think, even Francis has said that he thinks that Shia is really talented and
Hmm.
that
Sure.
he was working to try to make it better, but it was frustrating because he also had 100 other things to deal with, right?
Right.
And it's like I think that that is all. I mean, I think it's super interesting. I really I like Shia's performance in the movie. I
Yeah.
think that it is balls to
Strong.
the wall, and I
Right.
always appreciate that. I mean, I like even I think John Voight is balls to the wall in that movie, and I
Right.
think he's great too. I mean,
I mean,
I
having watched Megadoc now, I wonder if part of the reason that this didn't cohere quite as much is the George Lucas prequel problem, which is that he's made such a big thing and he decided to do it all himself rather than choosing the role that like I feel like this is a different movie if Francis handpicks a director and is a hands-on executive producer, or if Francis handpicks an executive producer and is the director that he is, but doesn't
Mhm.
have to do the same level of.
I think that it's not Megalopolis.
I
Look,
mean, that's
because
possible
Right.
too.
this is it's a recurring thing with Francis Ford Coppola, right? And suddenly this is becoming a movie podcast, but it's a recurring
I
thing,
think that's
right?
fair with this one. We'll get
It's
back to the
it's
comic.
it's the way that this thing worked was very similar to how Apocalypse Now worked.
Yeah,
And it turned into something that is a magnificent piece of film. It's
yeah,
very similar to how One from the Heart worked, and that turned into an even bigger disaster, like to the point where it destroyed the studio that Francis was trying to build, and I think Francis just has this, you know, he talks about art and he talks about creation and he talks about film in all the same way, which is that he wants it to be this sort of like uh, cooperative, uh, like group that just creates things, but with him in charge, right? And I think
right.
that that's there is hubris and there is ego in Francis Coppola, and in a way, like what's really funny when you bring up Lucas is that Lucas, in his own way, built the same damn thing,
Hmm.
but he did it in a much more methodical and
I
controlled
mean,
manner, you
that's
know?
one of the things that was really cool about having Lucas in the doc is that he
Yeah,
actually even talks about it like that.
yeah,
Francis just walks off the cliff. I'm
right.
like, okay, I'm gonna do this so I can do that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna make sure that I've built a parachute so that when
Right.
I walk off the cliff, I know what's gonna happen, right? And I think that that is, you know, like it's I remember if you've ever seen Hearts of Darkness, which is the
Yep.
fantastic documentary about the making of
Mhm.
Apocalypse Now, you
Right.
know, like Lucas, this insane idea, the insane ideas that floated around Apocalypse Now about like we're going to get a small film crew and go into Vietnam during the war and shoot this movie, and Lucas is like, well, that was John Milius's nutsy idea. I don't think that I was going to really do that. But and he's telling Coppola, he's like, if you get this huge crew and you go down to the Philippines, they're just going to eat you alive. And they get basically did. And the thing is like the deal with Coppola is that he does these grand, huge things. He said it himself. He's like, if I have some money and I spend it audaciously, then I can do something.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't want him any other way, right?
Right.
And I love the last act of his film career, which I think, he's like in his 80s now. So I think we've got to look at this as,
85,
Mhm.
yeah,
86
we've
now.
got yeah, we've got to look at this as sort of his last act.
This
He's
could be the last.
it could be the last. He's talking about another one, but I don't
Is
know.
he? Okay.
Yeah. But he's done like he's had these incredible ideas about exhibition. Like there was a movie that he made really low budget with Val Kilmer called Twixt, which was some sort of vampire movie. But he actually took it around the country as a road show and was editing the film live as the audience watched it. So he would be like, "Oh, the audience is responding to this plot line. We'll give them more of that." And it's
That's
like
crazy.
it was nuts, and sometimes it didn't work. But he was like, I think he tries to make. I think he's really trying to make film into theater because,
Yeah.
famously, there's the sequence in this movie where in larger markets, like in the first week, there was an actual actor that would walk out into the movie theater and
No, I
ask a
didn't know that.
question. Yeah, there's the press conference sequence where Caesar is answering questions, and an actor would actually walk out into the theater with a microphone and ask the question of the screen, and then
Wow.
he would respond. And like that stuff is incredible. Like I
Right.
people say that it's nuts, but I'm like, it sounds
I,
awesome,
I, I mean, nuts and brilliant can be
Sure.
side by side.
I mean,
But
that
Um,
I will
I mean,
say,
and
to
go
bring it
ahead.
back to the comic, sorry, I get really excited about this whole thing.
No,
Uh,
no.
but to bring it back to the comic, the one thing that was in this comic that I don't think is in the movie that I was like, that makes sense, is there's a moment where the book in like one line explains the whole time stop thing. Caesar says something like an artist is able to stop time. And I was like, because like it's one of the things in the movie that I was like, okay, I accept that this is happening, but I'm not quite sure how or why. But then it's right there. It's in the comic.
Right,
So
In the
right.
movie, I don't think that's in there. But then when he loses the ability to stop time, Julia or whatever goes and talks to him, and she gives him the speech about how, of course, you can, all artists can always, or whatever. And then
yeah,
he does the kiss and gets his powers back, and they stop time together or whatever. The one
right.
other thing for me that I missed is there's a point where they talk about the four elements or whatever that are important to a society or whatever. I think
Yeah, yeah.
a little bit of some of the really more talky philosophical stuff did actually get taken out, which is crazy considering how much is still in the movie. Because there are a
Mhm.
few lines in here that I think are actually pretty useful that were not actually in
Yeah.
the movie. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, a mixture between the handful of things that I think did get taken out in the movie and just the fact that being able to decide my own pacing in a comic makes such a difference. I felt like one of the reasons that I appreciated the movie the way I did is because I had read the comic first. And because I love the comic so much. Like the comic allowed me to take both the close-up view of human strife and human um jealousies and competitiveness and ego whatnot, while also taking the 10,000 foot view of like this attempt, like everybody's trying to make a better world, and some of them just like they have very different views on what a better world will be. Like it's such an
Hmm.
allegory for making art. It's such an allegory for the world itself. It's like what I love about this is that it asks the big questions rather than giving you any answers.
100%.
It's
100%.
it's also, I think, ahead of the time of its times by a
Yeah.
couple of years. In that, he's thinking about this and doing it, and you can see. I mean, and maybe it changed a bit because of when he made it, but you can see not only the echoes of Trumpism in it, but I think that when you look at what Caesar's actually doing, what he's really saying is because there's basically the conservative side, and then the mayor seems to be more of what I'd call a classic Democrat. Somebody who's like, we can't worry about making things better because we've got people to feed and roads to build and things that need to be done.
Hmm.
And Caesar's more like the sort of leftist who's like, no, we need to actually worry about making a better world and the environment and all this other stuff. And it's possible that's going to mean that there's going to be additional suffering in the current, that we can't let, what is it, let the now destroy the future or something like this,
Right.
Right.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Well, I mean, like, look, Caesar flattens a whole section of the city
of housing.
Right.
Yeah.
or
Right.
housing for his project. And like, I mean, I part of look, I in a lot of ways respond to Francis's thesis that because I think Francis does see himself as Caesar. I think that, we can't let the now destroy the future. Great. I think that he believes that a world full of art and beauty will actually lift up the whole world to a better place. And I think that there's some truth to that. But it's also like what I admire is that Caesar is not uh there's no excuse made for some of the crazy shit that he does, right?
Yeah.
And that the mayor specifically is not positioned as like a horrible person, but as somebody who just wants the system to work, you know?
Right.
And and then I mean, and even was it Cassius, the uncle?
Yeah.
Pracht.
Crassus.
Crassus. Like, I mean, like he's sort of I think he sort of represents like a kind of clueless, wealth. Like they just live their lives and he doesn't like he's like whatever, I don't think obviously, you have the
We have a lot of clueless wealth.
sure, but I mean,
Well,
like,
Fitzgerald, right?
yeah,
The rich are not like us.
right, yeah, but I mean, like, and and then you've got Wow Platinum, who's just
Right.
manipulating the system for her own benefit, has control of the media and is able to position herself in the
Well, and
best place possible, and
I
then you
think,
have, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I think the way that all of that was framed in a like three time periods very much. You've got the ancient Rome, you've got the current slash roaring 20s. So I almost counted as two time periods there and this futuristic time period, but maintaining that there has always been essentially like four big power groups, the one being the dreamers, the next being the we want to make the system work the best that it can, the next being the all I want is power and I'll do whatever I can
Hmm.
do for it, and then the one after that being I was born into power and I don't even know what I'm doing with it because I just have all this money and I'm having fun.
Well, and you also have the I have all this money and power, and again the LaBouffe character, which I can't remember the name either, uh, who out of pure
Oh, I just had it
uh,
and I forgot.
uh, out of pure spite
Yeah,
decides to burn everything down,
right.
right? Like he has no cogent philosophy. I mean, that's the to Dan's point, that's sort of the Trumpist thing in there. Like there is no cogent political viewpoint or policy or philosophy. It's just fuck all you people,
Right.
and what I I think that it's interesting that that character is clearly sort of the villain of the piece, but it's also sort of like he's portrayed as sort of sad and pathetic the whole time,
Right.
right? And he's manipulated by everybody, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I just think, we talk about all this stuff that's in there, and I think that it's about 5% too much, right? I
Maybe,
think
but I
I
think
think
that to me that goes back to what you were saying about A, taking the big swings, and B,
yeah.
like if you're really gonna try to do this allegory for, I mean, because this, like the, why can't I remember the name of the substance? If you're, I mean, this is essentially the
Oh,
artistic,
the megaloton,
right,
megadon,
Megalon, I think.
Megalon.
right, Megalon.
megalon.
But this is essentially the artistic theory of everything.
Hmm.
Rather than the physics theory of everything. This is the artistic theory of everything. So,
Yeah.
like, to leave out any of these parts isn't quite right. Just like Dan and I discussed briefly earlier today, because he was on the regular podcast. Um, the fact that, like, it also feels like sometimes there's not enough connective tissue, but that's, I think, a feature, not a bug, because when you're dealing with so much, nobody can actually hold it all.
Yeah.
So even presenting it all doesn't seem appropriate, because which storyteller would be able to, I mean, in some ways I almost wish that the thing was told by like a bard, and you were aware that you
It kind
were,
of is, though.
it kind of
Yeah.
Shakespeare's
is,
character sort of is in the
right,
Yeah.
movie, at least,
right,
But
Well, and I the you know the movie starts with a parable,
right.
you
mhm.
know? I mean, I think that it is, but also it's sadly one of those it's kind of, I think that the storytelling and the ambition of it flies in the face of this binary thinking world that we live in,
Yep.
and
Well,
it's like,
and also I think we've become accustomed to the idea that movies are supposed to be passive entertainment, and you cannot watch and enjoy this passively,
yeah.
because
So
it's
this is
about the
actually
questions that you ask.
one of the questions I had to ask you guys is that when I think about not only the movie but the book, if you think about he's been working on this for 40 years, right? If you think about, say, Kubrick's 2001, or you think even about, Apocalypse Now, they're not that different really in terms of being movies that are incredibly difficult to understand and have narratives that don't make a lot of sense and don't really give you all the answers. But they both made tons of money and won all sorts of awards. And is it just a matter of, is this Coppola's problem? Or is this just the problem that the audience has basically become so weak, we've atrophied to the point
I actually
where
have a
something.
theory on that, but I want to hear Sean and Mark first.
I'll let Sean go first because
Uh,
I could go.
well, I would say, look, your duty as an entertainer is to entertain. So I hate blaming the audience when the audience isn't entertained, because
Mhm.
um, that's your duty, is to entertain them. You don't get to choose who buys tickets to your show, right?
Mhm.
100%.
However, I will say that, you know, this film and the book, both take a lot of narrative leaps, and there's a lot of things that are sort of unquestioned and philosophical statements. I mean, I love the fact that it starts off with the Oscar Wilde quote that a map without utopia isn't worth drawing, or something like that.
Hmm.
Right.
Um, because I mean, there is an optimism to this vision, even though it's mired in the excesses of everything. Uh, and I think Dan and I were talking about the Tomorrowland movie on the last podcast, or maybe after, where I don't think people can accept optimism anymore,
Mhm.
right? Everything has to be a dystopia.
Hmm.
And I think Francis is a filmmaker who wears his heart on his sleeve. You can say that he has hubris and etc. But in the end, he's a true believer,
Hmm.
right? He really believes all that about this is art, and he put his money where he put his vineyard where his mouth is, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I come down between the questions of art and commerce so much. What's content and what's art, right?
Hmm.
And we're so used to content, right? Like this is not you can't watch this on the second screen,
Hmm.
right? If this were a Netflix show, it'd be 4 hours long because they'd have to input dialogue every 5 minutes explaining what's going on, right?
Right.
Which is I think you've heard Matt Damon talk about that.
Yeah.
Um, it's the film that Francis wanted to make, and I really admire him. Just giving this to Chris Ryall and saying, "Here's my script, you make yours." Uh, I don't know if any of that made sense, but uh,
Made sense to
It,
me.
I
okay.
think it makes entirely sense. And I mean, and you've heard me talk about this all the time. You cannot blame the audience if they don't like your work. You absolutely cannot. Your job is to make your work accessible to your audience. I think that when we talk about Apocalypse Now or 2001, I don't think that this story is as good as either one of those stories or as elemental as either one of those stories. Although, Sean and I have been at panels at Comic-Con where some guy goes up there and talks about how much 2001 sucks. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what you saw, but all right. I think that the big problem, in my opinion, is that there is a whole swath of audience out there that is listening to a very small or is being influenced by a very small snippet of people who feel like they have to say something about everything and it has to be binary. It either has to be the best thing they've ever seen ever in their lives or the worst thing that's ever been put on screen. And I think that that mentality has seeped out into the general culture to the point where people just kind of go like, well, I don't even like either they're so sickened by the argument about it that they just think that doesn't sound like fun, or they just say, well, somebody said that sucked, you know? Like, I think that, I can point to a number of times where this has happened. I think that John Carter is a movie that I love quite a bit. And I know, I mean, again, I don't think it's the greatest movie of all time, but the narrative around it was so defined before it ever opened that people just decided not to go. And I think that most recently with Supergirl, I think that whatever you may think about that movie, like I said this on someplace, I was like, I think most people went to that movie and they were like, I liked it or I didn't like it, and that was the end of it, right? They went home. But when you go on to virtually every platform and somebody is having an argument about whether that movie is good or bad, or and what it means about you if you think it's good or bad, it immediately makes me as an audience member go like, well, Jesus Christ, that does not sound like a fun time, or that doesn't sound like an interesting time. It doesn't sound like something that I would want to go see. And then they just don't go, right? And I think that, but I do think, to make a long story longer, I do think that Francis has a storytelling style that has not really evolved with the times. I think that um, I would not want anyone else to direct this movie, but he's worked with other screenwriters at times, and I think that that might have helped him. I think that he is making, I think if this movie had come out 76, 82, sometime like then, it probably would have been received with a much more, a, the Francis Ford Coppola market value would have been much higher and more people would have wanted to engage with it as a work of art. But I think that most people, when it came out, engaged with it, as Sean said, as content. And I'll never forget, I follow Francis on Instagram, and some guy got on there and was like berating him about making this movie and how stupid it was. And why didn't you just make a Batman movie? And I had never gotten more livid about online discourse than when somebody said that to an artist as accomplished and as worthy of respect as Francis Ford Coppola. And Francis, to his great credit, actually engaged with this guy and he said, why would I want to do that? There's already been a half dozen great Batman movies. What's the point of making another one? Yes.
Interestingly, by the way, there were points during this movie when you've got the rich brooding guy standing out on the big, Gothic eagle over the city, and then he's taking flowers and like going into the alley like Bruce Wayne does every year for his mom and dad. Where I'm like,
Right.
this is kind of a Batman movie, right?
Yep.
But the other thing that is
If
interesting
Batman
too,
had gone off and studied architecture.
exactly. He finally decided to do what he's supposed to, and instead of hanging around in the alleys, he puts his money to work actually making Gotham better by, using that best brain in the world to do something. Yeah, the weird thing is this last summer though, and I think it goes into this too. I'm starting to believe that as much as those of us who are sort of on social media and everything think about how all everybody's being affected by the discourse around people trying to cancel movies and whatever, it's weird how most movies in the end up kind of getting what they deserve. Like Supergirl was not a great movie, right? Odyssey now
How
comes
dare
out and
you?
it's Odyssey comes out and it is like, similarly, it's got all sorts of there's a black woman in it playing Helen of Troy and whatever. Makes God knows how many billions of dollars because people just didn't care and they wanted to go see it. And it's a pretty fantastic movie. Spider-Man's making a ton of money now.
Right.
So I think that we can overestimate that.
Uh,
I do think
I
though that if you go back and look at The Conversation, which is one of my favorite movies, The Conversation would make about $150,000 if you put it in theaters these days, right?
Sure.
Because it is the slowest ass movie in the history of cinema.
Yeah.
And this one feels a lot that way. It is, like you say, if it had, that's why I was thinking, I'm like, if it had been done in the 70s, this is a man out of time. If he'd made it when he was first thinking of it, it would have been received completely differently because I don't think this is a movie that is made for modern audiences, even though its message is exactly what modern audiences need.
See,
And
I'm
this is
gonna,
unfortunate, I think. I wish that he had used
I'm gonna, I'm
updated
gonna,
his style to do that.
I'm gonna agree with most of what everybody has said, while also saying that I don't think that I think from an audience standpoint, it's aspirational more than towards an audience. I don't know that it would have worked for a 70s audience because there are two things that I think massively limit the audience and also why I really wish he would make it more available on streaming because I think the more people who didn't go to see it while it was available to see but were willing to go, oh, let's see what everybody's talking about. I think a lot of them would wind up getting sucked in. But I think that there are two problems from a critical standpoint and from to a certain extent a societal standpoint, particularly if you're only seeing it once, if you're not sitting with it, if you're not being able to think about it. And that's the first is we don't like hopeful movies. What's the biggest difference between 2001 Apocalypse Now and this one? This one has hope. But that leads to the second and particularly possibly bigger problem. We really hate hopeful movies where the heroes are flawed. The
Yeah.
possibility that we could be looking at, oh, this is who our hero should be, but he's a deeply flawed and maybe not likable character
Yeah.
makes it that much harder for us to like. And then the
Even
third thing is that it's actually fun at times. And for whatever reason, when we're talking about great movies, the more fun they are,
I, you know,
Right.
I always thought that there's that line where Adam Driver is like, "Did you go to the club?" And everybody made that into a joke, and I thought it was fucking hilarious.
right?
that was
I mean,
good.
I was just like, and it was intentionally so.
Right.
It wasn't like he was making some weird choice that, it was like, and
And,
Driver
yeah.
was the one guy who, of everybody in that movie, he was truly fantastic. I mean, I
Mhm.
enjoyed Aubrey
I
Plaza
thought,
in it a lot,
yeah, I was about to
but
say, I thought Aubrey Plaza did a pretty
I think
outstanding
that
yeah,
as
yeah.
job.
far as just nailing it, Driver really
Yeah.
did. The one
Oh, yeah.
other Batman note here, by the way, is that I think that when you hear them talking at the big party, when Julia
Well, there
kind of
is
steps up
that
and
point where he
goes,
just goes, I'm Batman.
well,
I mean,
exactly. Well, he
Diesel.
kind of does because they're wandering along, and she's like, you don't have to be like this. You don't have to drink and do drugs and whatever. And he's like, you could be a good guy. And he's like, if you're a good guy, people want to destroy you. And if you're a bad guy, and he kind of leaves it like they'll just kind of let you do whatever you
Yeah.
want. And she
Yeah.
she fills in, she says they'll kill you. But I think he really is doing the Batman and Bruce Wayne playboy kind of thing, where he's
Yeah.
keeping that persona in the public so that people will not put him on a pedestal so they feel they need to knock him down. Because he's got those flaws, he's able to sort of get a pass a little bit more.
Well, and there's also so much truth to that. I mean, like
Well,
the two best men that have been president in my lifetime are Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama, regardless of how good presidents they were, just as human beings, far and
sure.
away the two best men, and how much of their presidencies were spent with people just trying to find whatever they could find because we don't want to have to like deal with anybody on moral grounds.
Well, I mean, I think that this society as a whole, and man, this is getting to an interesting conversation. I think society in a whole is so obsessed with uh, uh, imposing your own morality onto the people around you,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even talking about I'm not talking about criminal acts. I'm not talking about, things that are legally actionable. I'm talking about like how you choose to live your life, right?
Yep.
Like, and it go like, and I'm not,
Both
I
socially and economically.
yeah, I see it, and I see it go back and forth and back and forth and back
Mhm.
and forth, right? And the thing is like it's because, hmm, I truly feel like that there are forces on both sides of the political spectrum who are desperately, desperately wanting to have a totalitarian state where they can just tell everybody what they have to do and how to do it. And that is scary.
I mean, I think that there's probably an element of that. I think there's also an element of people want to behave how they feel most comfortable, but the only
Sure.
way they can believe that that's the moral way to behave is if everybody else behaves that way too. We have
100%.
this really deep issue with, oh, this is how I live my life and this is how you live your life, and both are okay.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
it's
yeah.
weird actually. I read a book a while ago. It's actually a series of sci-fi books that's mostly just sort of for fun. It's called the Bobiverse series. But one of the planets they went to, the guy started talking about like the golden rule and that idea of how you should treat other people the way that you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
And they're like, the people there were like, nah, you've got it completely wrong. You need to obey what they call the iron rule, which is that you should treat people the way they want to be treated. That one of the problems we have is this idea that somehow if I think that life should be a certain way, I should then try to treat other people that way. Well, if that's not the way they want to live, then that's not really the right way to treat them. And this golden rule thing gets in the way for us. That everybody thinks the world should be the way we would like it, and that other people would be happy too if the world would if I'm not gay, everybody should be not gay, and they'll be happy then.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works. And so
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
that was interesting for me.
I think that our society would be much better if we could embrace the I don't care. And I mean that in the
Mhm.
most benign
Right.
and non-confrontational way. Like,
I
oh,
do care if you're bleeding to death on the street. I will do something about it. I don't
right.
care if you
But
did something with your life that has no impact on my life or
Right.
anybody that I care about whatsoever.
right. Exactly. So, like, I mean, like everybody has to have an opinion on every fucking thing, right? And it's like, yeah, but how does that affect you? And maybe like if we could all stop for a minute and say, does that have anything to do with me?
I mean, to
No.
be fair, Mark, this is an opinion.
Yeah, I know. I know.
and,
I know.
and
Look,
I could say
that's
that
the
because I
other.
share it and I try to acknowledge that, like, yes, I am taking a side even in my not
Am
wanting to
I
have
not
to
wanting
take a
to
side.
decide? Right. But I mean, like, if you, in the words of a great philosopher by the name of Neil Peart, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Yeah.
So, um, but no, I think that to bring it back to the story, I think that there's a ton of stuff in this that is super interesting. Francis is obviously advocating for some sort of utopia, right? Some sort of artistic utopia, right? But what we see is that we have to tear down a bunch of people's homes to create a utopia. And it's
Well,
the
and
thing is like, but that
Is
every
he
utopia,
advocating for it, or is he proposing that it's not something that we should rule out?
well, I mean, like I
That's one of the things that I really
advocate
appreciate about
advocate
this
is
is
advocate is kind of a loaded word, okay?
right.
But he does put that quote at the beginning of the movie,
Yeah,
okay? So, and that Caesar to
but even
build
but even that
Megalopolis,
quote isn't about having the world be a utopia. It's
right,
about there being a utopia.
on the map. Does the
Right.
map get you there, or is the map just a series of goals?
Well,
Like there's
maps
all
will
Right.
sorts
show
of
you
ways.
how to get there.
Right.
A map
Right.
shows you
Or
how to get there. But
or is utopia a choice, or is utopia like, I mean, could the person who doesn't like what utopia represents decide to live somewhere else?
This is why you guys need to watch Tomorrowland.
I have it on my
I,
list. I
do you know
do.
what? When I got Disney Plus, the first things that I looked for was Tomorrowland and actually The Lone Ranger. Because I hadn't seen The Lone Ranger since I saw it in the theaters, and I thought it was not as bad a movie as people made it out to be.
Talking
So I
about
was like,
Army Hammer, Johnny
yeah,
Depp.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I was like, I'd like to rewatch both of those. And neither one was available. I think Tomorrowland is now available. So
It
because
is.
I do want to watch it, but I obviously, the Lone Ranger has all sorts of baggage attached to it now, but it
It's an entertaining.
since I would say I remember that summer after I saw that movie, the last act of that, the I was like, this is the best directed movie of the whole summer. And then it blew up. But I also have many theories about that movie, but I only saw it like once, so who knows if I'm right. But anyway, but my point being is this, and I think that it's kind of baked into the philosophy, it baked into this questioning nature of this film, right? Is that here Caesar's trying to build a utopia, right? And he has to tear down a bunch of people's homes for it. And I think that one of the things that is really hard to grapple with is that almost every utopia is built on somebody's being
Yeah.
quashed, right?
Hmm.
And Sean's going to hate that I bring this up. It's what I think about Star Trek The Next Generation all the time. It's like somebody's not happy. Somebody somewhere in the Federation ain't happy. Like not
Picard's
every
brother.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. But you know what I mean? Like if there's no conflict and no one and granted I'm talking about the first like season and a half, the Roddenberry version of TNG where no one argues and everybody's happy and no one has any problems. And it's like sounds like somebody has problems that we're just not seeing on screen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm an educator, so like I often dig into anytime there's a miracle that occurs in any state, and altogether too often when you have test rates go up or even dropout rates go down, when you start digging into it, it's like, oh, they dropped out or were pushed out right before they were counted for dropout rates.
Right. Right.
You know,
That's right.
And
I
the
mean,
even
dropout
the
rate of eighth graders was significantly higher, but dropout rate is counted by the number of freshmen that don't graduate.
you know, well, and even like in the book, he talks about how this future city, it's all about learning, creating, developing, celebrating. There's no idea of working. There's no idea really
Well,
of even money anymore.
see,
Like
right.
see,
it's a revolutionary reconstruction of society. There are going to be a lot of people who like the idea of money and like the idea of inequality who are going to be very
right.
angry in this, or if they just don't want to sit around
But
being in
but
school
but I
for
also
the whole
I
day.
also thought of that in terms of both what he'd created, which in some ways is the ultimate AI,
Hmm.
and like the real machine learning that we're looking at right now, where like how do you build a society as work becomes less necessary?
Hmm.
Which, is something that are we looking at?
I don't know.
I would say
Peter
if you're Peter
Thiel
Thiel,
and a few
your belief
people.
is that suddenly 98% of the population is no longer needed anymore and can be safely not fed and shuffle off the coil, and there'll just be enough, people to keep the machines running and the wealthy sort of happy, and that would be fine. I don't think they're making
Well,
a plan for the rest of us.
no.
I
No,
So,
mean,
not at
in
all.
so,
I mean, that's the whole point of, universal basic income, that
mm,
people
right.
talk about. But look, we live in America. I don't think universal basic income's coming
it
anytime
doesn't
soon,
seem like it.
right?
No.
Like, can you imagine, uh, uh,
I can
just,
imagine it. I don't
I can imagine it,
know that
but
I
can you imagine trying to get that passed through Congress? But
Yeah.
again, I can imagine it.
I,
I
I
don't
do, I find it, I
I
can't,
don't know what we'll have to experience to actually make it happen.
and I mean, this is, well, it is political, but I can't read or watch this story without thinking of the Fountainhead,
Sure.
right? And maybe it's just the architecture, uh, but I feel like this is a corollary to the Fountainhead, right? Because that's all about John Rourke's self-actualization, and
Yeah.
people are getting in his way, right?
Yeah.
Um, And in this, it's Caesar's self-actualization, but he's trying, at least he intends to bring everyone with him. But, and you can see Ayn Rand in the background going, this is not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Um, but so I just
But
find that
but I
that
mean I mean one of the things that I love about this is that it asks that question. It asks the question of why won't this work? It asks the
Mhm.
question of why won't Crassus's world work? It asks the question of why won't um, Frank Cicero's world work?
Right.
You
Hmm.
know, I mean, they're all cohesive visions that
And
all
it's weird
have
how
deep flaws.
in a meta way, this asks that same question of kind of our current world in one way, and that is why is it that Megalopolis, the movie, didn't work? And
Mhm.
why is it that probably, this deeply thoughtful hardcover sold about maybe 1,000 times fewer copies than the latest Absolute Batman,
Right.
Hmm.
right? I mean, the simple fact is that I would love to know how successful this was, but I'm betting
Um,
it didn't sell a ton of copies.
no.
Caesar doesn't have an axe on his costume.
Well, I think
That would
also
help.
like as is so often the case with adapted work, like they're tied together,
Well,
Right.
100%,
Mhm.
you know.
you know. Um, and I drifted away from it when Mark was talking about just appreciating the audacity and the just jump off the cliff nature of the way
I'm glad you appreciated what I was saying enough to drift off.
well we all drifted off.
What
I
day is
didn't
it?
I didn't push back in. Other people talked, Mark, and I didn't interrupt. Um, I was thinking that like making this graphic novel synchron, in time with the movie. I mean, it's not the first time it's been done. Both Alien and Star Wars had their adaptations made at the same time the movie was being made.
Yep.
Star Wars famously with way less
Mhm.
participation. I mean, they didn't even know what color to make the lightsabers. Um, and Alien with way more. They had them on set. They showed them all sorts of things. They got to see, I think, an early version of the film, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but like, I love the appreciation of the sister mediums, and that there really is something that can be told or shown in a comic that might not be there in the movie, and vice versa. And like, I wish, like, if I had a theater and a comic shop, like I would want to do the pick up your book on Saturday, or pick up your book on Monday, come watch the movie on Saturday, and then we'll discuss both afterwards on a regular basis. Because I think that like it particularly put together, it's such a fascinating look at existence. I mean, politics, art, humanity,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well,
and
I mean,
like, yeah,
I
go
I
ahead, Mark.
always thought I always thought that like I think that part of having the graphic novel is that like Francis, like, let's be realistic, he put his entire fortune into making this movie, right? And I think he was trying to make it as much of a multimedia sort of experience as he possibly could to try to generate as much money as he possibly could to refill the coffers. I
Right,
probably taking off from Lucas, right? I think if he
right,
thought he could have gotten Megalopolis action figures in stores, he probably would have. And
right,
he also wanted to sell it as a big, spectacular spectacle, right? That you would want
right.
to go to the theater to see, right? And I have long thought that the rollout of this film should have been much smaller. I think Coppola should have, like, he did this later on after it was open. Like, he played the Chicago theater they showed the movie, and then he had a Q&A afterwards where he sat on stage and
Oh,
answered questions. And I think that that should have been the first rollout. Do it as a Roadhouse thing where they would go from city to city to city and show the theater. You would have got all the diehard people who really wanted to see it would have paid to come out and see it. And then they would have had this interaction with Francis, and you could have sold this book in the lobby, you could have sold
Right.
merchandise, you could have sold all that
You
stuff.
could have made it
And
part of the ticket.
right. And you could have also done the things that some of the larger venues got, which was the live actor coming out to answer the
Right.
question, and all of this really audacious stuff that was in the movie that got replaced as it was put into theaters where, you just couldn't do that. And then you could have had a larger theatrical release. And again, I think this has been mentioned here a couple of times, like his his seeming desire to not have this be on streaming or in home media is really frustrating because he seems to want it to be solely a theatrical experience. I mean, like I got a 4K of it that I had to order from England. Uh,
Right.
so,
I mean, seriously,
and
I think that this is the movie that if it was available, and particularly available like not to purchase but actually streaming, if it was on Prime or HBO or Disney Plus or something that lots of people have and they didn't have to pay extra for it, you would have tons of people who would decide to watch it just on a lark. And I would be willing to bet that like 1 in 5 of them, if it was still in the theater somewhere, would go, "Oh, now I want to go see it on a big screen,"
right.
I, I mean, why?
or
I
be
mean,
interested when it tours towards them or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
Megadoc was on the Criterion Channel. Why
Right.
was why was this not on as a companion?
Right.
It's
Right.
usually the other way around. Hey,
Yeah.
you
I
like
mean
the movie, watch
I
the
could so
documentary.
see like this feeding, like there are plenty of movies that I've seen first streaming that when I see an opportunity to see them in the theaters, I'm all over it. The
Well, I mean,
world has
like,
changed enough that a lot of people don't see, I mean, between it being more expensive, between us reaching a point in society where we're more comfortable not having to do things together, where those of us who have sensory issues, or I mean, I went to see Odyssey in the theater, but I scoped theaters and I found the one that when I bought my ticket, I was the only one in the theater. There wound up being about a dozen, but none of, like, for the most part, I got like my space to myself, and that I can handle way better than, like, because for me it's
well,
not just a different experience because, oh, we've got a crowd. It's a different experience because a crowd makes me anxious. It can make my skin crawl. It can make me feel all sorts of sensory things that have nothing to do with the movie, you know.
I
um
I hear and respect that, Ted, but I
yeah.
do think that part of, what we were talking about earlier about the reaction to this and why people don't go to things and this sort of binary thinking, I think that it is driven by not being in a room experiencing a story together, right?
I
Like
think that
I
there's
think,
absolutely truth to that. But again, to me, that means we should do anything and everything that will have people go into the room together, and like having it only available for a limited amount of time without the ability to see it first, you know. I mean,
I
this
mean,
is the argument you have.
I don't think there's a lot of people who are going to pay $15 to go and see a movie once they've already seen it on their screen at home.
yeah.
There,
I mean,
there will
like
be a
I
few, but it's limited in numbers. But I mean, I will note this: my daughter, 20 years old, we watched it together because she watched Mega Doc with us, and she's like, "Okay, this is just crazy. I got to see this." She liked it. She liked it a lot. She liked it better than I did, I think. And she's like, "Yeah,
yeah.
this makes perfect sense." He's a guy who he's like, lost in time because he's regretting his past and he's hopeful for the future. And
Hmm.
so you know. But I think that this is a movie that really could have made him for a new generation, because there are a lot of younger people who I think are sick of the cynicism of our generations and are
Hmm.
ready for some more hopeful stories. Because the
Well,
world around them is complete shit. You know, in the
But
90s,
that's an even
our
bigger
world
group
was
that's
pretty good.
unlikely to go and see a movie
Correct.
for
He should have put it on
$15,
the home video. He should
sight
have put it on video.
unseen, from the guy that made Apocalypse Now and The Godfather, which they acknowledge are great movies, but aren't ones that make them feel good.
No.
well, I mean, there's also Tucker, A Man in His Dream, which is one of the most feel-good movies I've ever seen.
Right.
Despite the fact that the man's life is ruined at the end, I'm like, yeah.
And don't forget Robin Williams in Jack.
Oh my
I
God.
like Jack. So I watched it recently and I remembered that it's also got Bill Cosby, and that makes it a little more difficult.
Uh, but but I also think, I think this is really an interesting conversation, quite frankly. I think that this idea that you have to know what you're going to get before you want to go see it is also very detrimental
Oh,
to
absolutely.
experiencing new things. Like and look, and I understand what you're saying in terms of the economics of the world right now, but I mean, like that's also really sad. Like, I mean,
Right.
I went and saw things, like in my heyday of film going, when it was, from like my late teens to mid 30s, I would go see anything. I would pay my 15, $20 and I'd go into a theater and I'd see a movie. Whatever it was, didn't matter. Romance, comedy. I never really was much for horror, but I mean, like, but I'd see
I
it
mean,
if
but
somebody I was,
what I mean, first, was it 15 or $20 then?
eh, I mean, like in the 80s, it was probably $10.
I mean, I remember how upset in the 90s I got when they raised prices at Cineplex Odeon to $8.
Mm. I mean, I always remember spending at least $10. I mean,
Well, but
that's
were you getting popcorn or candy too?
sure. But I mean,
And you were
that's
getting out for 10, $15. I mean,
no, I mean,
that's
like with popcorn and candy, I was getting out for like $20. Listen, I went and saw Return of the Jedi one night, and I swear I sold with a bunch of other kids, and I spent $55 just on candy. So I mean, because I had already seen it once, and I was up and back and up and back, and I was like, I
right,
need more Swedish fish, uh,
right.
and then I
But
vomited in the
like
car.
like I mean, and for that matter, like second
But
run theaters have vanished. I mean, when I was a kid,
sure,
like the first run theater was $8, but I also had a $1.50 theater in town.
but look,
My
all I'm s-
brother just saw Spider-Man at the $5 theater. It
Yeah.
started at the $5 theater.
I mean, I did
They
manage
cut
to,
the credits off.
yeah, I did manage to see Odyssey for $10 because I both saw a matinee and I saw it at one of the theaters that's cheaper. But like that's part of the thing is we need to have like it's really only the small chains or the independent theaters that ever work at a low price. There are three huge theater chains that like seem to go out of their way to make it so you have to like they're practically competing with you going to the real theater.
So are you guys, you don't have, because we got in Fargo, we've got a company that owns all the theaters pretty much. But every Tuesday is $5 night, and then
mhm.
all the concessions are reduced as well. And every Thursday is like $5 for students night. So there's 2 nights a week where anybody who's like a student or young folks can go to the movies for $5 and then get like relatively cheaper concessions as well. So they,
Sure. I
they
mean,
are
like,
doing that.
AMC is for members is cheap on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It's half price.
No.
But
But
they also
but I mean, I
charge for
think
the
the
Like
one
six
thing
or
membership.
is
$7 for a movie.
the one thing though I think we'd all have to agree on is that Coppola misjudged the market. He's
100%.
no longer really in tune with how people are seeing movies, how willing people are to go out and experience a challenging piece of art, how willing people are, how able people are in some cases to be able to go out into that, pay $10, sit in a room with a bunch of people and the like, and that has then impacted the ability of him to get this very deeply personal story out to people. Because I think really his audience is literally one person, right? He made this movie for him as sort of a gift to himself for all the work
Yeah.
he'd done, with the idea that this is going to be sort of his gift to America and the world as this vision of what he thinks we could become if everybody starts to
I mean,
understand and appreciate their arts better.
Well,
honestly, I'm curious as to how this movie will be looked at 20 years from now. I think it's a movie that's going to age better than a lot. I think it's one of the, one of those where like the number of people who like it will only increase. I don't think anybody who likes it will stop liking it.
well, as long as they can see it. And
Right.
that's also part of where we talk about the distribution and not allowing it to be streamed and that kind of thing. I would say I totally agree. I think that he misconstrued a lot of things. But I also think that it's just the market was, and I totally agree that I think in 20 years it's going to have a much better reputation. But I also think that that's going to be like it was not, it was a huge movie that wasn't preordained IP. It wasn't a superhero movie. It was something that was truly a work of an independent artist. And I think that in 20 years, when we're looking back at the sea of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC universe and all of this stuff that
It's going to
you
stand
know
out.
it's going to stand out as
Yeah.
something that was
Here,
personal and real, in a very
here's
real
another
way.
question. Um, we regularly hear of so many current movies costing 300-400 million dollars, and this one was made for 120 million dollars. Um, what does that say about the the bloat in movie budgets? I've long suspected that movie budgets aren't actually as accurate as they could be because so much gets contracted out that would have been done in-house before. So there's not only the cost of materials and the cost of labor, there's the profit for the other company that's often only an other company in name. Um,
Yeah.
so my question is this actually an example of the fact that like when a $200 million movie gets made, the people putting up the money have already like paid themselves 50 or $100 million?
Well, I mean,
But
I
I mean,
think
he also didn't have to pay a director.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's got a big star in it, but he doesn't really have a cast full of, John Voight is not getting a ton of people calling him.
No, I
When was the
I
last
I
time you
get
saw
that.
Dustin Hoffman in a movie? So he
No, no,
probably
no.
didn't
He
spend as much
probably got
effect.
most of
well,
them at scale.
and and it's also a chance to work with Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah,
Right.
I
on his
think
dream
that
project.
Megadoc makes that pretty clear that a lot of
Right.
people were like, I want to work with Coppola. And
Mhm.
so that drives prices down. Also, I mean, like I was fascinated watching the whole thing about the special effects team and how he fired everybody
Yeah.
and I think that one of the Coppola things is I'm always fascinated by his desire to do effects work in camera. You know, his Dracula being the epitome of that, where they used pretty much only techniques that would have been available for in like 1928 or whatever
Mhm.
to do all of the effects, and then makeup and stuff like that. But I think that, there's the moment where uh Caesar and the Megalon is rebuilding his face or whatever, and that was apparently done in camera,
Mhm.
like just projecting
I
stuff
think
onto
he
his
said he
face.
got 70% of it in camera and they were going to have to make
Right.
the 30 make up 30% of it with.
I
Right.
was
And I
surprised the
think that,
big giant statues were just people painted gray that then
yeah,
Yeah.
moved or whatever. That looked
yeah,
like it
yeah,
would have entirely been CGI.
I
yeah. I
felt
mean,
really bad when he fired his team though, because she was so blown away to get the
Mm.
job.
yeah. But I also think that, when you're working with somebody who's paying for everything and they want it their way,
Yeah, no, no,
you got
no,
to
I
do
get
it
it.
their way. And I mean, like, and
But it also
you know,
felt like she never figured out what his way was.
well, but
I
and
mean
that's the
that
thing.
was something that came out is that he wasn't always great. I mean, you even hear him say, "Just do it the way I want," and they're sitting there going, "We don't know what you want."
Right. Well, I mean, but that also I think speaks to the development of this project over 40
Right,
years.
right,
I think that he reevaluated what it was supposed to be like constantly.
right.
New actors, new ideas, and I think that it's very much, I think that working with Francis Coppola is like jazz, where he's improvising and you've got to hear the melody he hits and then
Right.
work with it. And
Right.
then when he changes the melody again, then you got to shift, right?
Right.
And I think that some of those actors, and I think like Adam Driver just was like, I got it. All
Right.
right. Whatever happens, I'll just react to it. And I think like Shia, where we started this, was trying to make some sense out of it.
Yeah. He,
And
he he was
and
trying to play classical.
yeah. And I think that that's super interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that,
Well, and I
this
think I
question,
go ahead. Finish.
I mean, I do think that, you know, like let's say Spider-Man Brand New Day. I don't know exactly how much that costs, but I'm betting it's over $200 million, probably
I
closer
thought I
to
heard
three.
close to three.
Easily.
Right. So, I mean, like a huge part of that is going to be that you've got these actors who've been in the other three that now want more money. Uh, that there's, Sony has to get their cut, Disney has to get their cut, Marvel has to get their cut, everybody's got to get their cut. They keep saying, they keep wanting it to be bigger and bigger and more spectacular and like how much more can we do? And it's like, find like the whole point. The one thing about it is I have not seen it yet.
Right.
Want to see it. Colleen wants to see it. We're going to go see it at some point. I know Sean liked it. Dan obviously liked it because he just gave me a thumbs up. But
Yep.
when I watch that trailer, I'm also like, this seems like it's almost a story that could be a little bit smaller. Like maybe we didn't need to have the Hulk tear down a building or whatever. Maybe like it seemed like, but everything's got to
I
get
don't know.
bigger. It's got to.
I think it should just been a movie with a Spider-Man Hulk fight, a Spider-Man Thing fight, and then a Spider-Man Wolverine fight. And that's just the movie.
So Deadpool versus Wolverine.
Except the Spider-Man wasn't in that.
But I don't know. Like I think I'm I'm ready for more movies like Megalopolis.
Yeah.
I'm ready for more things that feel like somebody is
The only
is
thing I'm more
look
ready
look
for than more movies like Megalopolis is more movies that have like small budgets
sure.
and are like Megalopolis. Not in terms of scale, but in terms of we're doing this thing because we're going to try it.
Right.
The problem
Well,
is Matt Damon talked about that actually a while ago. And he said that the movies he liked to make, which are, the Good Will Hunting kind of movies, they just, there is no longer any appetite for those in Hollywood because the way that the economics work now,
In
you make
Hollywood, and this
a five
this is
or
where
yeah,
I
you
go
make a five
back
or ten million
to
dollar movie, you've got to then spend at least that much to advertise it,
well,
and
but
then you're supposed to
You
I
don't
also
have the
wonder how
secondary
much of the
market.
money they've already made back on the bigger budgets.
maybe, but
well,
why would they throw it away?
I
Those
mean,
other
like
movies aren't going to make their money back, then they just don't make them anymore.
it used to be that, you would sometimes make those smaller budget movies for clout, we won an
Right.
Oscar, we wanted, and
Yeah.
the thing is,
But
but there was also at one time there was also a market for those things because
100%.
there were adults who went to the movies, right? And I think that adults have, like, even more than kids, have kind of been broken of that habit,
Hmm.
right? And I think that that's really sad. And that's why, it's the summer all year
But
round now,
but could they be brought back into the habit if movies that they actually cared about were
I
made
think
again?
the bigger
And
problem
for
though
I
that
is
think
matter,
so.
like how much money is all but guaranteed in the streaming market on a movie? Like I always was annoyed when people only looked at first weekend box office on some of those small movies because I'm like, yeah, except the first week DVD sales are going to be so high, they're going to turn a profit.
when
Yeah.
DVDs were out, I think that was true. That was the main
Yeah.
thing that now they don't have.
So
They
so
didn't have
Yeah.
so
Well,
so like
that was part of
what's your
Matt Damon's whole
floor
thing
for a
too.
that
streaming
Right.
was part of
title?
Damon's thing. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That streaming does not provide anywhere near that sort of revenue stream.
Hmm.
Right.
Well, I
But
mean,
yeah,
and I know I can speak from direct experience that, uh, I get a very tiny residual check from my Chicago Fire episode every 6 months. It's never for any streaming. And I bet you people stream Chicago Fire on a pretty regular basis, wherever it's being shown. Uh, but I get nothing. And like, there's no, like, the other thing that happened, and it was funny, I was just watching YouTube, and it was, uh, Bruce Campbell was talking about how, Hollywood is dead, right? Nobody's shooting anything in Los Angeles anymore. Everybody's shipping it out to Europe or to Canada, or and for a while they were going to Georgia where this movie was shot. And now the Georgia production facilities are basically done because Marvel picked up and left and moved to England where they could get a better tax break. But and he was talking about how he's like, I hate to be the one to say this, but there was a moment there where the unions could have all gotten together and said, we're gonna not push the studios for a couple of years to try to reassert this industry. But they jumped on it. Like those two strikes right after we came out of the pandemic, I think really hurt the industry in terms of maintaining a place in society, I think that uh it was a time when they should have entrenched and said, okay, we're going to defer this for a year. Let's get material out there and get people to have a reason to come back to the theaters, keep people to have a reason to shoot stuff here, to, and it just ended up more and more combative. And
Maybe, but I mean, from what I've heard, the
no,
studio's
those
been
strikes
playing.
had to happen. Those strikes
Right.
had to happen. I'm just saying that they happened at the wrong damn time.
Oh yeah. But I don't know when else they I mean, if anything, they should have held the line harder in like their previous strike, possibly. Um,
Well,
I
I mean,
mean,
like, they were also dealing with tons of stuff that didn't exist the last
well,
time they
yes
struck.
and no. I was just rewatching Studio 60 and like one of the plot threads in that was um the network head investing in software that would look at a script and tell you what you needed. So Aaron Sorkin was writing about it
Sure.
in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I mean, I'm always
But everybody,
amazed when it turns
like,
out that there are things that some people were worried about a long time before other people really started paying hard attention to them.
much
Um,
like Francis Ford Coppola was paying attention to how we have to
oh
become
yeah,
a more artistic society.
Well, but also, like, if he started this 40 years ago, that means he started it under Reagan. He was
Oh,
seeing
I
a
know.
lot of the writing on. I mean, this is something I love about comics too. Like,
Right.
there's no set of creators that I think is more forward thinking than than like comics creators. Like the number of things that like are almost well are certainly considered too fantastic for the movies that are put in comics, and then it's like, oh wow.
Yep.
Wait a
So
minute.
Yeah.
I have a kind of getting back to this bad boy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a what if question for you guys
sure.
about what maybe the man should have done. So, going back to the whole Batman question, if he had done this adaptation, said I want a comic book adaptation, but for the comic book, the only change I want you to make is to rename the lead character Bruce Wayne and call it like Batopolis, but leave everything else exactly the same. How many copies would this have sold? And how much it would have helped Megalopolis actually get into people's minds?
I mean, we would have to clear it with DC, but
Yeah.
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
do it through DC and just have DC do an Elseworld story with Coppola
right.
I mean,
where Adam's driver is Bruce Wayne.
I think that in relation, I think
Who's the Joker? I mean, do you
I think
recast?
well, obviously it's the Shia LaBeouf character.
Yeah,
Right.
LaBeouf is the Joker for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think that there's no doubt that that would have sold better. There's no doubt. You put bad on something, it's going to sell.
It's going to sell.
But I don't know. I think that that would just
50
be
back
Mark made a
titles every
really
month.
great disgusted face there.
It would be
It's just
awful.
that
It would be completely. But it's sad because what I mean is
Yeah.
that people
It's
will
the same
buy
kind of
any
story.
shit if it's in
I'm
universe.
I actually
That's 100%.
And sometimes if
Yeah.
you want to take something really great and get people to buy it,
I
I'm almost
actually
like, find a way.
this is where I wish we had better sales data because I would love to see US versus international sales on this because I would be willing to bet that as long as they have a European partner, it's sold it's like significantly better in Europe than it has here.
Probably.
Well, I think
Because I
the
feel
film
like
did
this
better
is
in Europe.
yeah, because I feel like this is way up their alley in terms of the sensibilities of what they actually seek out. Um, which I mean, that says whole massive things about American culture
Yeah.
that I
Well,
don't
I
necessarily
mean,
want to get into now, but we've touched on.
the last thing here, I pledge allegiance to our
Yeah.
Homo
Oh,
sapien family
I loved that.
and to all the species which it protects, one earth indivisible with liberty, education, and justice for all.
Yeah.
You know, and juxtaposed with the birth of a baby. And
Right.
Yeah.
And the human adventure is just
It's
beginning.
just beginning.
Right. Well, Mark and Sean deserve to have lunch before they have to go to their rehearsals
What's that?
today.
What's lunch?
Yeah, it's that thing that you're supposed to do from time to time so you don't pass out from lack of calories later today. Hydration
Yeah.
and some calories, Mark. That's all I'm asking. Water and calories. I don't care if
I
you find good food as long as it's not completely unhealthy and it has calories, because I know how much you're going to be running around at rehearsal. I've never even seen you at rehearsal, but
Oh,
I can just imagine that like you dialed to 11.
Does Sean have something to say about that? It seemed like he did.
Is it
he
dialed to
just
12,
sits there
Sean?
and watches everyone.
Does he?
Sits there and judges and directs.
That's all he does? I mean, that's what he does during the like preview performances, kind of. But I've seen him during preview performances, and he's a ball of energy, writing a ton of notes and trying to goose the crowd into laughing when they're supposed to laugh and clapping when they're supposed to clap.
Ha 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 ha
Exactly.
ha.
We all know that sound backstage.
Well, you also know that I think that most people backstage can tell when it's well earned as well.
Right.
Right.
Um, but look, I think this was I loved reading this book. I think
Yeah.
I think that what just to sort of wrap up my thoughts is like I think like with Dan, I was kind of hoping for something a little more off the film because I did feel like it was a pretty straightforward adaptation. I so and I think that kind of shows in the fact that we spent a lot of time talking about the movie because
Yeah.
it is
I mean, because
basically the same
it is the
story.
story.
I mean,
I think camera angles are different on some of the
sure.
stuff. I think
I think that the art is really cool and really evocative. I thought it was very interesting that apparently mo that like they clearly didn't get the uh likeness rights for most of the cast.
I don't even think they knew all of the cast when they started drawing it. So,
Well, I mean, like
it became
Adam Caesar kind of looks like Adam
right,
Driver, but
right.
whatever.
There were
But I
some
think
things that were known and other things that weren't known. So, I mean, it was that I don't remember the details of what Chris told me, but that was deliberate. Is they didn't want it to look exactly like anybody because they were working in tandem
right.
and things could
But
change.
I would say to anyone listening that um it's well worth reading, and I think it's well worth seeing the film and
Yeah.
making your own mind up about it. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying you'll love it because
Yeah.
it is what I would call a deeply flawed masterpiece, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
And I would say even if it wasn't deeply flawed, again, it asks big questions. It doesn't give answers.
yes.
And that's a harder movie to love. It
Yep.
requires audience participation.
Yes.
Um, which again, I think that's the single biggest thing that has changed in cinema in my lifetime is we have so many fewer films that require audience participation, at least out of Hollywood. It
I
seems like
mean,
there's a more thriving indie scene than I realized. I've been discovering it because comics creators are actually pretty on top of it, and I keep getting recommendations from them. But
well, I mean, like, look, think of it this way. If E.T. came out now, there would immediately be a sequel.
yeah,
Like, there'd just be no question about it.
right,
And you know, the blessing of being Steven Spielberg is that you have enough clout to say, yeah, no, we're not going to do that.
right.
We're not going to remake Jaws. We're not going to, and
What do you mean?
when
There's how many Jaws movies?
those are bad sequels, and but
Jaws
there's been,
3D, baby.
but I mean, but IP is everything now,
Right.
and
Oh yeah.
making sure that you can mine everything out of it. I
Well,
mean,
and
for
for that
Christ's
matter, not
sake,
having to pay for original, I mean, again, I know people in Hollywood, they have easier times pitching reboots
Of course.
than they do pitching completely original material.
I was just watching Corridor Crew, the VFX YouTube channel, and they were talking about the live action Last Airbender show that's on Netflix. And they were showing this sequence and they showed what it looked like in animation and what it looked like in live action. And I was like, why, why would you remake this? Like it's
It's the
exactly
same,
the same thing.
right? Right.
Moana.
Hmm.
Why do we need a live action Moana? I don't know.
It's not even an old movie.
No. Anyway,
You're not even introducing a new generation to Moana. It's the same generation that liked the
yeah. Anyway, but yes, I do need to start getting ready
But yeah,
to.
for Mark Pratt and Sean Harklerod, soon to be in Shane at the the City Lit Theater in Chicago, for Dan Newland, who is contemplating launching a new podcast very soon, and myself. This has been the Pulp Blotter Book Club on 22 Panels, and we will see you after the next page.